Hi, this is Lane 8492. This will be my second true crime story video I'll be doing this evening. Usually I do ones that involve here in the United States, but this one is in a foreign country. This is one I saw on Deadly Women, the episode of Do It Yourself Orphans. And I kind of have to admit, she's one of those few deadly women I do sympathize with. Her name is Susan Edwards. She was born Susan Wycherly to William and Patrcia Wycherly in the United Kingdom. You see, William Wycherly had served in the naval merchants of the United Kingdom, and he and his wife Patrcia Wycherly had their daughter Susan Wycherly. And of course, Susan Wycherly ended up going on a Lonely Hearts dating agency, ended up meeting Christopher Edwards. They were obsessed with spending money, getting into debt, collecting loads of Hollywood memorabilia. Of course, I'm not into that lifestyle, but if they choose that, that's their business. I mean, it made her happy, even though it was just fantasy, when her husband was getting letters from Hollywood celebrities who've been deceased for decades. But it made her happy. But for Susan Edwards, her self-esteem was damaged. Because from what I saw in Deadly Women with William Wycherly, from what Candace DeLong's commented on this, William Wycherly didn't approve of Christopher Edwards, but then again, he wouldn't have approved of anybody. Like, no man was worthy of his daughter. Like, he wanted to have total control of her. And he was angry and resentful when she married Christopher Edwards, and he lost that control. And then Susan Edwards later found out that she had an inheritance from her grandmother and demanded it. But apparently her parents, William and Patrcia Wycherly, spent it on a house. And then when they sold the house, spent all the money, and she never got one shilling or even £1 of it. And she was angry because it turned out her parents took advantage of her. And she and Christopher Edwards were in a lot of debt over their loads of collection of Hollywood memorabilia. And she was angry over how they treated her and took advantage of her. So that was one evening when William and Patrcia Wycherly, by the way, William Wycherly, he was an octogenarian, and Patrcia Wycherly was 63. They went to bed, and Christopher Edwards took a World War II .38 caliber revolver and shot William, and he and Susan Edwards shot William and Patrcia Wycherly in the chest, and they died instantly, and buried their bodies in the backyard of their house in Mansfield in London in the United Kingdom. And now she wanted to take their pension for what she felt was rightfully hers after she felt how they took advantage of her. And for 15 years, they spent about £250,000 not buying vacations, luxury cars, or even a good home. They spent it mostly on Hollywood memorabilia. They were living happily, thinking they were going to live happily ever after for 15 years, thinking they believed they'd get it, and not knowing really for sure that William and Patrcia Wycherly were dead, that they'd been murdered. And it would have continued like that had it not been for a particular British tradition, because William Wycherly would be approaching 100, which means by law, he has to be interviewed in person. They tried to tell him that he was away, but they weren't going to have it. They want to see him as required by law. And that's when they knew their world was starting to fall apart and was about to crash down in flames. And probably they'll soon know that William and Patrcia Wycherly have been dead for 15 years. And they're going to be the suspects, and the law is going to come after them. And as a result, Christopher and Susan Edwards took whatever memorabilia they could with them and fled to France. But they were broke, didn't have much money, and they were scavenging, barely surviving. And that's when Christopher Edwards called his stepmother saying that he needs money, and that's when he confessed that he and Susan had murdered her parents, William and Patrcia Wycherly, that they'd been dead all this time. Told them that they were buried in the house of the backyard of theirs that they sold. And Christopher and Susan Edwards eventually returned to the United Kingdom to turn themselves in at the train station, which you don't see very often. Usually it's at a police station. And of course, Christopher and Susan Edwards are found guilty of the double murder, given life imprisonment, and have to serve a minimum of 25 years. And due to their age, they'll probably never see each other again. And of course, Susan Edwards, she loses her parents, her husband, and all of her treasured memorabilia. But here's why I kind of sympathize with Susan Edwards, because Candace DeLong said this. Christopher and Susan Edwards weren't hardened criminals or natural born killers. Christopher and Susan Edwards murdered Susan's parents, William and Patrcia Wycherly, because they took advantage of her, stole her inheritance, and took their money for that reason. And as Candace Long said in this one, is the lesson is treat your children well. And she's not wrong, because if you don't, it's going to come back to bite you. And when it does, it's not going to be pretty. And I'm not saying, and here's the thing, while what Christopher and Susan Edwards did is not justified, if this is true, her parents did no better by taking her inheritance, and she didn't get to have any of it. And if it means that they took advantage of her, that William and Patrcia Wycherly died for it. That's why Susan Edwards is one of those deadly women, one of those on deadly women, few on deadly women who I sympathize with. Yeah, I said, don't take advantage of your child like that. If they have an inheritance, make sure they get it. And treat them well. Well, hope you enjoy this video and let me know what you think. Thanks.